Vice News did an interesting report on an initiative happening in California regarding the homeless population. Obviously, with COVID-19 hitting, we have a pandemic. So many problems are associated with that. And there's a fear that you can't have homeless people all over the place outside in the middle of a pandemic. That's very unsafe for them, but also for the rest of the population. So action needed to be taken. And I want to show you some of what they did, and then we'll discuss.
So in April, LA County started moving homeless folks into thousands of suddenly empty hotel rooms, part of a statewide program called Project Roomkey. The county set a target to move 15,000 homeless into hotels and motels, a number based on who on the streets was most at risk for COVID, those 65 and up or with underlying conditions. Dr. King is here to see some of his patients.
We're here once a week setting up a pretty complete clinic where we can take care of their needs, do an examination, order their medications, whatever we need to do to get them started on their health care.
Remember I met you?
I remember.
We took the pictures.
You guys were soaking wet.
Living on the beach every day was bad.
Kathleen Cooper is a 49-year-old artist with a mechanical heart valve who's at risk for stroke. King used to treat Cooper and her partner when they were living on the beach.
Come on in.
You mind giving me the grand tour?
Yeah, sure.
Now the couple shares one of this hotel's 133 Project Roomkey rooms.
This is a big space.
This is a bathroom. So like I said, full shower. And then we have a little area we can sit. Like I have a desk, do my creativity because I'm an artist.
Funding for this program came largely from FEMA, and hotels were initially leased for 90 days. Now, 4 months in, FEMA's still paying, but only in monthly increments. It's unclear how long the money will really last, or if all the leases will be extended. Project Roomkey was projected to cost around $195 million in just LA County, but the exact figure is unknown because so many agencies are involved.
So that's all really interesting. They were only able to do, what was it, like 25% of their goal since they launched this thing, and the original goal was 15,000 people staying in the hotels. So, you know, in some ways you could say that's not a success because they didn't hit their goal, but I mean, on the other hand, they did get thousands of people off the streets who were at the highest risk level during the pandemic. But really, I mean, my takeaway from this story overall is that when your back is against the wall and we really feel like we have to do something, the ball starts rolling, man. And they got thousands of people to have a roof over their head who are high risk during the pandemic. Now, listen, long-term, you know, viability of keeping them in hotels, that's not going to happen. But we absolutely can and we absolutely should build housing units to give homeless people a roof over their heads. Now, there's been studies on this, guys. We literally, even as taxpayers, you save money if you give homeless people a place to stay. People have a hard time wrapping their mind around this, but when you give homeless people a place to stay, it makes it so that you avoid the other costs of somebody being out on the streets, all the emergency costs associated with that, whether it's, you know, police encounters when they're involved with police, or whether there are other ways in which they cost society money. But really the monetary thing, put the monetary stuff aside because that's not as important as the moral angle of it. But my point is, even from the monetary perspective, they've done detailed studies on this and they found that it saves 20% if you give homeless people a roof over their head. So, number one, we should do that because it's actually the fiscally responsible thing to do, but on top of being the moral thing to do. But beyond that, I mean, another takeaway I have here is that not only do we need a Medicare for all system where you can go to the hospital and it's taken care of, I feel like we also need mental health clinics the same way. Because a lot of the people who are homeless have mental health issues that are undiagnosed and untreated. And if we had a situation where we had mental health clinics that were just as easy, you could just walk in there and get treated and you don't have to pay out of pocket. Again, this should be part of a Medicare for All system. I think we'd just be so much healthier as a country. I think that, and it's not just homeless people too. I think a lot of people have undiagnosed, untreated mental illness and they could use help. And if they had an option where, it wasn't going to cost them an arm and a leg, they'd probably take advantage of it. But in this country, you can't even go to the hospital. Forget, a mental hospital. You can't even go to the hospital and get away scot-free and not have a large bill to pay. So the system is just so, it's non-existent in some ways. The system is non-existent when it comes to mental health stuff for people, including homeless people. The system is non-existent when it comes to a large federal program to house homeless people. Guys, we have anywhere from 600,000 to 1 million homeless people in this country. And I got news for you. With the pandemic and the depression, there was one CNBC article that said it could be up to 28 million people who become homeless if we don't act. So take the high number, 1 million now to 28 million. 28 million. We got to have better systems in place, man. We have to have better systems in place. We do. We have to. Is it really too much to ask to put a roof over the heads of these people? And each one of them is a person. Each one of them has a story as to how they got there and what happened. And, they're people. They're people. And I want to live in a society that looks at somebody in a situation like that and they go, we're going to help. Am I asking for people to go all out? Are you going to get somebody a 2,000 square foot home with a pool in the backyard? Nobody's asking for that. Nobody's asking for that. Just a roof over their head, a place where they're safe, and some mental health treatment. And really, it took a pandemic for people to realize, and they did this in the UK, a bunch of places did this. They were just like, we're just going to give you a place to stay. It's like, oh, okay, so that was obviously an option all along, and the only reason you're doing it now is because you feel like it threatens the general population more to have homeless people out there with a pandemic. You don't want the rest of the population to get sick, so that's why they're doing it. But really, all we need is the political will. And if this isn't, convincing you yet, let me say to all my conservative friends out there, a lot of these homeless people are veterans. They're veterans. And this is how much their society has left them behind. So it turns out, if we want to get a roof over their head, we can. We can. It just requires the will, the political will, hiring enough people, and a giant effort. So I hope we can get our act together, man, because I really want to have a situation where there's no homeless people. There's no reason to have any homeless people in this country. None. We have the ability to get rid of them, and we're not doing it. We have the ability to get rid of the entire concept of homelessness. We can house everybody if we wanted. We just have to do it.